She met him on a Thursday. That kind of Thursday that doesn't feel like anything special. Gray sky, traffic noise, coffee too bitter. She was just running late to her sister's engagement dress fitting. He was standing near the entrance of the boutique, on the phone, arguing quietly with someone. She wouldn't have noticed him if he didn't glance at her and say, without smiling, "Your bag is open." That was it. No cinematic music, no butterflies. Just a stranger pointing out something small, helpful, irrelevant. She said thanks, walked in, didn't even look back. But 2 hours later, when she stepped out again, he was still there. Same phone, same tone, but his eyes followed her this time. She felt it. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But something hovered in the air, and she knew it. The next time she saw him, it was in a place that should have made everything stop before it began. He was sitting at the corner table of Café Mondo, her go-to coffee shop for quiet emails and croissant therapy. And her sister, all glowing and excited, waved her over. "This is Rami," she said, "my fiancé's brother." And just like that, it became a problem. Because in that moment, with a coffee cup halfway to his lips, he looked at her like he remembered. And worse, like he wanted to. The room didn't spin. Her heart didn't stop. But something inside her did whisper, "Don't do this." She smiled politely, sat next to her sister, avoided his gaze. But her fingers trembled slightly when she picked up her coffee, and she noticed his had gone cold. There was no spark, no flirtation, not even a word exchanged. But that silence, it said too much. She told herself it was nothing, a glance, a weird coincidence, her imagination, maybe. But that night, lying in bed, she replayed it. The way his eyes softened just a bit when he looked at her, how he didn't smile that somehow made her feel seen. He was off limits, not just because of her sister, but because she knew herself too well. She fell too easily, read too much into small moments, trusted eyes over actions. Still, she didn't block the thought. And that was her first mistake. Over the next few weeks, she saw him more than she wanted to admit. At the engagement dinner, he was the quiet one in the corner, helping with chairs, refilling water, asking if anyone needed help. Everything but drawing attention. But she noticed how he glanced at her when she laughed too loud. How his gaze lingered half a second longer than it should when their eyes met across the room. Once, in the kitchen, they stood side by side waiting for tea. No one else was around. Her sister was in the garden, the guests distracted. Rami reached for a spoon at the same time she did. Their hands touched. A nothing touch. But she felt it. She didn't pull away immediately. He didn't either. Then came the smallest smile from him. Not flirty, not bold, just conflicted. "I didn't think I'd see you again after that boutique," he said, voice low. She almost lied, said she didn't remember. But instead, she let silence answer for her. It felt safer that way. Her sister walked in before anything else could be said. After that, the avoidance became intentional. She skipped gatherings where he might be. She muted group chats. She even stopped going to Café Mondo for a while. But temptation doesn't need presence. It only needs space. And the space between them was filled with things unsaid. Questions unanswered. What-ifs unburied. Then one evening, after a long day at work and too many messages from her sister about floral centerpieces and wedding playlists, she gave in to the craving for quiet and coffee. Café Mondo was half empty. Soft music, yellow light, and the smell of cinnamon and warm bread. She sat in her usual corner, opened her laptop, tried to focus. But 10 minutes later, he walked in and paused and saw her and didn't pretend he didn't. He walked over slowly. "Didn't expect to see you here again," he said. She looked up. "Neither did I." He didn't sit, just stood there with that unreadable calm. Then, softly, "You okay?" Why that question? Why now? She nodded. "Yeah, just needed air." He nodded too. Same. And then, without invitation, without decision, he pulled the chair across from her and sat. They didn't talk much after that, just sipped coffee. She typed nonsense on her screen. He scrolled through something on his phone. But their silences started to feel familiar. Dangerously familiar. She told herself it didn't count, that it was just coffee, that people run into each other, that silence isn't a sin. But the next time wasn't by accident. A week later, her sister was out of town visiting their cousin. There was a family dinner planned for Rami's side, and somehow, she didn't even know how it happened, she got added to the group text. Probably by mistake. Or maybe her sister thought she'd help with something. Whatever the reason, she knew she shouldn't go. But she did. She arrived late on purpose, hoping to sneak in, help out, blend in. And she did, for a while, until Rami saw her from across the backyard. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just watched her, like always. Later that evening, they found themselves alone by the kitchen sink, washing dishes, the house buzzing behind them with laughter and clinking glasses. Outside, someone lit sparklers. Inside, everything felt still. "You shouldn't be here," he said, not looking at her. "I know," she replied, not looking back. He rinsed a plate. She dried it. Then he whispered, "But I'm glad you are." That was the first time he let the door open. Just a crack. And she didn't close it. The real mistake came 3 days later. She was walking home from work, earbuds in, scrolling through a podcast she wasn't really listening to. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. It was a text. Still thinking about that sparkler night? She stared at the screen, paused, then typed, "I told myself I wouldn't reply." A minute passed. 2. Then, "And yet?" She didn't reply. But later that night, she did. They didn't meet right away. It started slow. Texts, always late. Thoughts shared in the margins of midnight. Little confessions that felt safe in the dark. He never crossed the line, not with words. But the intent was there. She could feel it in every pause, every carefully phrased sentence, every time he wrote her name like it meant something. He made her laugh in a way she hadn't in months. Not loud, but from somewhere deep. He saw things in her that even she had forgotten. She knew it was wrong, but sometimes when your heart is lonely enough, wrong starts to feel like permission. The night it finally happened, it was raining. A sudden storm. Roads slick, air heavy, thunder soft in the distance. She had left her umbrella at work. He offered to drop by with one. She refused. He showed up anyway, not with an umbrella, but with 2 cups of tea. They stood at her door, water dripping from his hair. Her breath caught somewhere between fear and something else. She She should have closed the door. She didn't. She let him in. It wasn't planned. No candlelight, no music. Just quiet. Just two people trying not to look too closely at what they were doing. He handed her the tea like it was the most innocent thing in the world. She took it with shaking fingers. Neither of them spoke at first. They sat by the window, rain tapping gently against the glass. The lights dim, her phone far away on the kitchen counter, as if distance could soften guilt. He didn't touch her, but he looked at her like he could, like he wanted to, and she didn't ask him to stop. They talked about nothing and everything, about how hard it is to feel seen, about timing, about family expectations, about how sometimes you meet the right connection inside the wrong situation. He told her, "I've never wanted to ruin anything. Especially not this." She whispered, "But it's already ruined, isn't it?" That night, nothing happened the way people think it does. No dramatic kiss, no sudden passion, but his hand rested near hers and didn't move, and her head eventually leaned against his shoulder. And when she exhaled, long and heavy, it wasn't relief, it was surrender. In the days that followed, she tried to act normal, but guilt is loud when everything else goes quiet. She avoided her sister, skipped calls, blamed work, invented errands, but every lie made her stomach twist tighter. Rami texted less, maybe out of shame, or maybe because it was safer that way. Once, she asked him directly, "Do you regret it?" He took 3 hours to reply, "I regret the timing, not you." That didn't make her feel better. Eventually, the wedding grew closer. Fittings, flowers, family group chats bursting with plans. She stood beside her sister at the final rehearsal, watched her smile, watched Rami avoid her eyes. And in that moment, seeing him hold the bouquet for the bride, adjust the tablecloths, carry his role like nothing happened, she realized something sharp and undeniable. He was good at hiding, and she wasn't. After the wedding, they never spoke again. No dramatic goodbye, no closure. Just a long, quiet silence that folded over everything like dust. Months later, she saw him at a birthday party with someone new, someone who looked at him like she once did. He nodded politely. She smiled back. And in that second, that split-second glance, she didn't feel pain. She felt tired. Tired of loving in shadows. Tired of mistaking connection for destiny. Tired of being the girl who keeps the secret, but never gets kept. She walked away early that night, ordered a cab, sat by the window and let the city blur. Maybe love isn't always a villain or a savior. Maybe, sometimes, it's just a mirror, and this time, she didn't like what she saw.